right, so we're diving back into Survive the Island. We're right in the thick of it this season.
Definitely.
And today, we're focusing on Jordan.
Yes.
8 chapters in, we're halfway through.
Yeah.
I'm already fascinated by how he's playing this thing.
Oh, he's a fascinating player for sure. Very different than a lot of what we've seen in past seasons, I think.
Right.
He's not the kind of player who just runs in, guns blazing. He's very methodical and calculated in his approach.
Yeah, and you can see that right from the start, chapter 1. I mean, wakes up on the beach, no memory. Classic Survive the Island trope, right? But then he sees a shadowy figure.
Yeah.
And instead of, calling out or panicking, he chooses to follow silently.
Yeah, and that right there, I think that tells us so much about him as a player.
It does.
He's already thinking strategically. He's not letting his emotions get the better of him.
He's assessing. He's a very, very analytical player.
Absolutely.
Like weighing the risks and rewards of every single move.
And I think that's really going to serve him well in this game, because this island, it's not just about surviving the elements, it's about surviving the psychological strain as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Hmm.
There's this constant unease, like something's just a little bit off about this whole place.
Remember that strange pull he feels towards the waterfall in
Yeah.
chapters 2 and 3?
Yeah. It's like it's more than just a need for water.
Right. It's like a force beyond his control. And then, of course, he encounters the woman behind the waterfall.
Oh, yeah.
The infamous waterfall woman.
Speaking some language we don't understand. Aggressive.
Yeah. And what does Jordan do? He runs.
He runs.
Classic fight or flight. And, in that moment, I think he made the right choice.
Really?
Yeah. Self-preservation, you got to prioritize that, especially when you're dealing with something as unknown and potentially dangerous as that woman.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's a missed opportunity for interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe an alliance. I mean, we see a lot of players form those early alliances that really help them through the game.
Absolutely. But there's no right answer in Survive the Island. Every choice has consequences. And in this case, Jordan chose safety over the unknown.
And that's something we see him do time and time again.
Right. It's a pattern.
A pattern of choosing that safety and that isolation. And then, boom, chapter 5, he meets other players. Andrea, Boone, Mayo.
And for the first time, we see him, actually participating in building a shelter, collaborating.
It's huge.
It is.
For a player who's been so solo up to this point.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, is he starting to trust them?
Or is it just strategic? Is he using them to get further in the game?
That's the beauty of it, right? You never really know what's going on in these players' heads, but there's definitely a shift in Jordan's behavior.
Oh, for sure. There's a shift.
And it's fascinating to watch how it plays out.
And then back to the waterfall in chapter 6.
Oh, here we go again.
Andrea's acting weird. Drawn to it, almost like in a trance.
That's a whole other deep dive, right? What's going on, Andrea?
Right. But Jordan, he rejects that pull. He decides to climb the waterfall himself, searching for answers.
He's trying to take control. He's not just going to be swept along by the islands, it's weird currents.
Yeah. He wants to figure things out on his own terms. But the island doesn't make it easy for him.
Nope. Chapter 7.
The dark figure again. But this time it's like eerie silence. This stillness.
Like the island is holding its breath.
Yeah. And Jordan he freezes.
Oh, man, you can feel the tension in that moment. Like the island's messing with his head.
Oh, yeah. Big time. And then chapter 8 throws everything into chaos. Andrea jumps into the waterfall. A new figure appears even more terrifying than the last, scares off the dark figure, and now Jordan's the target.
It's a classic Survive the Island cliffhanger.
And he's got an impossible choice to make.
You love to see it.
Last time, we left Jordan with quite the predicament. New, scary monster thing looming over him.
I know, right? Talk about pressure. And this is what makes Survive the Island so great. Forces you to make a move. Can't just stay still, think it over. You hesitate, you get punished for it.
And it's not like his options are, appealing. Like, reason with this thing, fight it, run, or follow Andrea into the waterfall.
Each one feels like, oh, what's the word?
A gamble.
Yeah, a total gamble. Like any of them could be the end for him, but also maybe the key to winning the whole thing. And that's what gets me about Jordan. All season, he's been so careful.
Mr. Logic.
Exactly. So to see him backed into a corner like this where logic maybe doesn't apply, that's where it gets good.
Well, let's break it down. Reasoning with this new entity, I mean, is that even on the table? I mean, this thing just scared off the dark figure, which was already terrifying.
And Jordan, I mean, he's clever, but he's not some, master manipulator. He's not going to sweet talk his way out of this.
Right. He's not exactly known for his silver tongue.
Yeah.
All right, so reasoning, probably not going to work. What about fighting?
Oh, come on. We've been watching him play. When has Jordan ever been the type to just charge into battle? He analyzes, he strategizes, he doesn't brawl.
All right, so fighting's off the table too.
Yeah.
So that leaves us with running or the waterfall.
Mm-hmm.
But running, I don't know. Seems like delaying the inevitable.
This new figure, it's got Jordan cornered. This isn't some slow-moving monster. This thing's got him trapped. So really, that just leaves us with the waterfall.
The ultimate leap of faith. I mean, we don't even know what's down there.
Exactly. And that's the brilliant part. It plays into our deepest fears, the unknown. You know, it's basic survival instinct. We're wired to avoid the unknown and survive the island. It exploits that beautifully.
Okay, so before we get to Jordan's decision, and I know you're dying to hear it, I want to take a step back and look at the bigger picture here. We've talked about his isolation, his cautiousness with other players, but there's also this growing sense of unease he's got with the island itself. The weird stuff.
Like he's realizing this isn't just some, physical challenge. There's something deeper, something psychological going on here.
Yeah, and I think all of these themes, they're all coming to a head here in this moment.
It's like the island is a mirror, reflecting back at him, forcing him to confront who he really is.
Okay, so back to the cliffhanger. What does Jordan do? Does he reason, fight, run, take the plunge?
Right, and it's like all his careful planning, all that strategy, it all kind of goes out the window in this moment. He's forced to make a choice based on, well, something other than logic.
On this island, you got to just let go of control and embrace the unknown.
Exactly, and that's what makes Jordan's story so compelling. He's not just surviving the island, he's surviving himself. The challenges, the choices, they're forcing him to change, to become someone he maybe didn't even know he could be.
It's like the island itself is a catalyst for personal growth. It's pushing him to his limits, revealing his true potential.
And for Jordan, I think that potential is just starting to unfold. We don't know what awaits him at the bottom of that waterfall. We don't know if he'll find Andrea or what new challenges he'll face. But one thing's for sure, his journey is far from over.
And that's where we leave our deep dive into Jordan's Survive the Island journey for this week. But don't worry, we'll be back next time to break down the fallout from his decision and see what twists and turns await him in the second half of the game. All right, so we're diving back into Survive the Island. Today, we're going to take a close look at Ian, how he's handled the first 8 chapters, what kind of decisions he's making, what those decisions say about him, and, think about if he even has a shot at getting off that island.
Especially since you're at kind of a crossroads right now in the game.
Oh, absolutely. We'll get to that. But
Yeah.
first, let's go back, way back to chapter 1. When we first meet Ian, he wakes up on the beach, totally lost, no memory of how he got there. And the way it's written, it's like you really feel it, the pounding headache, the sand, the smell of the ocean.
Yeah, it really sets the scene, makes you feel how vulnerable he is.
Totally. And then there are those footprints in the sand. Ian's not alone.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, right? Like, what else is out there? And boom, he's got to make a choice. Go into that jungle or head towards the big, scary shipwreck. Classic dilemma, huh?
Absolutely. But the thing is, he's got no past to draw on, no memories to guide him, just pure instinct.
So what does he do? He heads for the shipwreck, takes the risk he can, kind of.
Yeah.
See,
Interesting. Shows us he's not just going to run into anything blindly. Seems like he wants to gather information before jumping in.
That's a good point. And, that pattern kind of continues in chapters 2 and 3. He finds the wreck, meets some other survivors, and then wham, storm hits while they're up on that ship's mast.
A storm that really changes things for Ian, wouldn't you say?
Big time. Graham, one of the other survivors, gets hit by lightning, falls right into the ocean, and Ian, what does he do? Jumps right in after him. I mean, that takes guts. Risking his own life for someone he barely knows.
Yeah, it shows a different side to him, doesn't it? There's that compassion, but he can think fast under pressure, too. More to him than we first thought.
Definitely makes you think, but then things take a weird turn. Chapter 4, Ian manages to get Graham back to the beach. Everyone's exhausted. And then he just leaves them there, takes off into the jungle.
Yeah.
Alone. I gotta admit, that one surprised me. What about you?
It certainly adds another layer to his character, that's for sure. Makes you wonder what's going on in his head. Is it fear? Is it guilt? That instinct to survive kicking in?
Right. Like, what's the island doing to him? And speaking of which, chapters 5 and 6, he's on his own in the jungle and he runs into this, it's this creepy structure built out of all these twisted branches. Like, Seriously creepy. I'd have run the other way, but not Ian.
He's curious, isn't he? Even when he's exhausted and in a totally new place, he wants to know more.
It all ties back to those first choices, doesn't it? When he's faced with something he doesn't know, he needs to figure it out. Like, if he can understand it, then maybe he can control it.
Makes sense. Trying to find some order in the chaos, right?
Totally. But sometimes that search for knowledge can lead you into some, well, some dangerous places, like in Chapter 7 when Mike shows up. And the whole feel of the game, it just changes.
Yeah, it gets darker somehow.
Right, like you know something's off. Mike's movements, they're stiff. He's carrying this hammer in a box of matches, just creepy. And Ian, well, he sees him and runs. Some might call it cowardly, but I think it's smart. What do you think?
I'd agree with you there. It's a tactical retreat, right? Recognizing maybe this is a fight he can't win.
Exactly. And then, well, then we've got the cliffhanger at the end of Chapter 8. He comes out of the jungle and there's this concrete building. Like, seriously, where did that come from?
Talk about a surprise. And there are two figures standing there watching him. No idea who they are, but it feels like, well, like things are about to change in a big way.
Totally. And that's where you, the player, come in. He's got three choices.
Yeah.
Confront them, watch them from a distance, or try to, I don't know, talk to them or something. And it feels like whatever you choose, it's going to have huge consequences.
It does, doesn't it?
So what are some of the more interesting takes you've seen on Ian? Like as a character? I mean,
Well, a lot of people are really focused on that back and forth we talked about, between him playing it safe and then suddenly being super brave.
right, right.
Some people are saying he's like a classic hero. The kind who wants to do the right thing but is scared at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. Like he's trying to figure himself out in all this chaos, and then you've got the whole amnesia thing on top of it.
Exactly. No past to fall back on, no relationships or anything. It's like he's a blank slate, which is kind of exciting, but also pretty scary.
So it's like his amnesia is both good and bad, right?
Sure.
On the one hand, he has to learn everything from scratch, but on the other hand, he's not held back by his past.
That's a great point, and it really connects to that idea of control we were talking about. He can't change his past, but he can try to control what happens now.
Which makes me think about that ending of Chapter 8.
Hmm.
You know, the concrete building and those two figures just watching him. That changes everything.
It does. It's like the island's testing him. Will he be cautious and just watch them? Will he try to talk to them? Or will he just confront them head on?
Right. It's impossible to say what the best move is. Each choice could be good or bad, and it really depends on what kind of person Ian wants to be.
And that's what's so great about Survive the Island. It's not about finding the right answer, but about exploring what happens when you make choices.
Yeah, it makes you think, what would I do, if I was stuck on that island?
Absolutely. So have you seen any theories online about those two figures at the building?
Oh my gosh, so many. Some people think there are other survivors, maybe even friendly ones, and then there are others who think they're like connected to the island's dark side or something.
Wow.
Yeah, like some supernatural force Ian will have to deal with.
Spooky.
I know, right? And the game does such a good job of playing with those fears of the unknown. Even that concrete building, it's so out of place in the jungle.
It really is. Makes you think about civilization versus nature, doesn't it? Like order and chaos. Maybe it's a sign he can escape, or maybe it's a trap.
This is why we love talking about this game. It's so deep and makes you really think. It's not just a game, it's like a mirror,
And the fact that you, the player, make the choices, it makes it really personal.
Right. It's like you're asking yourself, what would I sacrifice to survive?
It makes you wonder if anyone can really escape the island unchanged. Maybe the real challenge is dealing with those darker parts of yourself.
That's deep. It makes me even more curious to see what happens to Ian. Speaking of which, how do you think his earlier decisions will affect how he handles this latest challenge?
That's the big question, isn't it? He likes to analyze things and be careful. So I think he'll definitely try to observe the situation first.
Yeah, he's not going to just jump into anything, especially after what happened with Mike.
Exactly. But then there's that other side of him, the one who's willing to take risks when he has to, like when he saved Graham.
Right, right. So what do you think will be the deciding factor here?
I think it depends on how he sees those two figures. If he thinks they're dangerous, he'll probably be extra careful. But if he thinks they might have information or could even help him, he might be more willing to take a chance.
Interesting. Makes you wonder if the game designers did that on purpose. Like they're trying to get us to think about how we made decisions in uncertain situations.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. And that's what makes this game so good. It's entertaining, but it also makes you think about human nature and what it takes to survive.
Okay, I need to know what happens next. So What should we be paying attention to with Ian's next move? What will it tell us about him, and will he make it out alive? We've spent a lot of time talking about Ian and what he's been through, but what really gets me is how this game takes a simple idea like survival and turns it into something so much bigger.
Right. Like, survive the island isn't just about escaping the island. It's about figuring out who you are, you
Oh,
know?
I like that. So how does Ian's story show that?
Well, think about his amnesia for a second. It's not just there to make the story interesting. It's like when we start something new in our own lives, we can feel lost and have to make choices without knowing what's best.
It's like he has to start over completely without anything to help him.
Exactly. And just like Ian, we have things in our lives that try to influence us or hold us back. Like the other survivors, those weird creatures, even the island itself. They're like all the pressures we face in the real world.
So the island is like a symbol for all the obstacles we have to overcome. And our choices, well, they show who we really are, what we believe in and what we're afraid of.
Yeah. Right, and that's what makes the game so interesting. Makes you think about the consequences of your actions and whether you're doing the right thing.
Which brings us back to Chapter 8. That concrete building and those two figures just watching him. It's such a powerful image.
Yeah, it's like that building doesn't belong in the jungle. It's like civilization versus nature. Maybe it means he can escape, or maybe it's a trap.
And the way he decides to approach them will show how much he's changed since the beginning. Will he be cautious, or will he trust his gut and take a risk?
The great thing about this game is that there isn't one right answer. Every choice has good and bad outcomes, and it's really up to the player to decide what kind of survivor they want to be.
Okay, so ready to do another deep dive.
Always.
This time we're looking at Bryan's game,
Yes?
Survive the Island.
8 chapters in.
It's looking good.
Things are getting really intense and just, it's fascinating to see.
Yeah, how it's all playing out.
Yeah. How his choices have shaped the story.
And you know what really stuck out to me
Mm-hmm.
right from the start?
Yeah, tell me.
It's how Bryan, he's so analytical.
Right.
Like, most players, I think
Yeah.
waking up on a mysterious island,
No memory.
no memory,
Right.
you'd probably be freaking out.
Right.
But he goes straight for that shipwreck.
He's what happened?
Like, let's figure this out. Let's see
Yeah.
if there are any clues.
It's a very smart move.
I know. It reminded me of
Like 6 o'clock.
classic mystery novels.
Right.
Where
Yeah.
it's like, okay, the detective shows up,
Mm-hmm.
you start with the physical evidence.
Exactly.
Except here it's, a wrecked ship.
Right, and the stakes are a lot higher.
And there's danger.
Yeah, you could actually die on this island.
Oh, yeah. Not just in the book.
That's not just a game.
Right. Exactly.
But that really sets the tone for his whole approach.
Absolutely.
Like constantly gathering information, assessing risks.
Trying to stay one step ahead.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
in chapter 2 when he enters the ship.
Oh, yeah.
Despite those warnings.
Yeah. I mean, that took some guts.
Right.
A lot of players would have just stayed away.
I would have been like, nope, not going in there.
But Bryan, he's driven by this need to understand.
Right.
Like, what are the island's secrets?
What's going on?
Even if it means...
Even if it's scary.
Yeah. Facing some pretty
Right.
creepy stuff.
Remember that bone dust mural?
No, I still get chills thinking about that.
I know.
It was so creepy.
So creepy.
Yeah. It's a classic example of...
Risk versus reward.
Exactly. He believes that knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Mhm. That's his weapon on this
Yeah.
island.
Right.
Information.
But he's not reckless.
No.
He's
Yeah.
calculated.
He knows
He knows when to hold back.
when to push forward, when to hold back. Like with that storm.
Oh, yeah.
Chapter 3.
Chapter 3.
That supernatural storm.
I mean, some players might have been like, oh, I can ride this out.
Yeah. I could tough it out.
But he's like, nope,
Bryan's like, I'm out of here.
this is bad news.
Self-preservation.
It shows real adaptability,
Yes.
which is essential in this game.
Totally. I mean,
This island is constantly
throwing curveballs.
throwing curveballs left and right.
And you got to be ready.
And the players who can adapt,
Yeah.
they're the ones who thrive.
That's so true.
Right.
And then there's Rosendo.
Oh, yeah. The guy with the map and the key.
Like right away.
What a character.
Bryan is suspicious,
Rightly so.
but he still teams up with him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like that was
That's calculated risk.
definitely.
Yeah, he knows.
He knows Rosendo's got info.
He's got the information.
He's got the key to the bunker.
Yeah, he needs him.
So he's willing to play the long game.
But it's a great example of
Yeah.
how social dynamics play out.
It's like sometimes
Yeah.
you've got to make alliances with people you might
Yeah.
not trust.
People you wouldn't normally hang out with.
Yeah. You're not choosing your best friend.
Right. Right.
You're choosing who's going to help you survive.
This is survival.
Exactly.
But Bryan's not naive.
No, he's watching every move.
He's like side-eyeing him.
Yeah, he's noticing those inconsistencies.
All those little things. It's like he's a detective.
It's a great comparison.
Interviewing a suspect.
Yeah. Does this add up?
And it pays off.
It does.
Because chapter 6...
Oh, boy.
Bam. Betrayal.
Locks him out of the bunker.
Oh, I did not see that coming.
I have to admit, I didn't either.
I know. I was like, what is happening?
It was a masterful stroke of deception.
It was so good.
But you know what's even more impressive?
What?
Bryan's reaction.
Oh, tell me.
He doesn't waste any time
Yeah.
with anger or self-pity.
He doesn't freak out.
He goes straight into problem-solving mode.
What's the solution? How do I fix this?
Yeah, he doesn't even beg to be let back in.
No.
He's like,
You
"Fuck
know,
it,
climb this building,
I'm getting in."
and I'm breaking in myself.
Talk about taking control.
That was a pivotal moment, I
Yeah.
think, for his character development.
He's not just surviving.
He's evolving.
He's thriving.
He's realizing
Yeah.
that self-reliance is key.
In this game, you can't depend on anybody.
Can't trust anyone.
And that leads us to Chapter 7.
On that rooftop,
All catching his breath.
after that climb.
A mysterious figure appears.
Dun, dun, dun.
Right.
It's getting real now.
I'm already getting nervous.
Yeah. The stakes are higher than ever.
Yeah.
The island is presenting him with a choice.
Oh, this is good.
Power or struggle.
Because it's not just any power.
It's tempting.
It's like revenge
Control.
The things he wanted.
there. This is where we leave him.
at a crossroads.
He's come so far.
Yeah, intelligent, resourceful.
Self-reliant.
Yeah.
But is it enough?
Is it enough to survive this island?
That's the question. You know what's interesting? This game,
Yeah.
it pulls from a lot of different sources.
Oh, yeah.
You've got your classic Myst vibes in there.
Okay.
Lost, the beach, you know,
I see it.
that kind of island mystery.
Yeah.
A little bit of Castaway, even
Right.
that survival aspect.
Even like Survivor. The show.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The social dynamics.
Yeah.
And it really weaves it all together.
It's like mystery.
Mm.
Survival.
Psychological tension.
It's more than just
Oh,
staying alive.
It's about
Right.
how do people behave
Right.
under pressure.
When things get tough.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you could see that in Bryan's story.
Totally.
That isolation, the
Mhm.
danger,
The alliances.
shifting all the time.
But what really gets me
Yeah.
is how much emphasis
Oh, tell me.
they put on choice.
Play your choice.
Every decision
Matters.
has consequences.
It ripples throughout the whole story. And that's where Bryan's analytical side.
Could be his downfall.
Right.
It's a double-edged sword. He's thinking ahead. But
Sometimes you overthink it.
you can get paralyzed.
Right. You got to be able to act.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The island doesn't reward hesitation.
And that's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's been safe because of it,
Right.
but he's also missed some opportunities.
I think back to chapter 4,
Yeah.
when he hesitated to follow Rosendo,
Into the jungle.
worried about a trap.
Yeah.
Turned out to be a shortcut.
I know. I was like, come on, Bryan.
It's all about balance.
Yeah.
Logic and intuition.
You got to trust your gut sometimes.
Yeah.
Even when it doesn't make sense.
Even when the data says no.
Especially for someone like Bryan.
You so analytical.
Yeah.
Right.
So how does this all tie back
Oh, yeah, good point.
to Chapter 8?
To the cliffhanger.
He's got this choice
He does.
that could change everything.
Power or the vent?
Right.
What are the risks?
What are the rewards?
What do we know about Bryan?
Yeah. What do we know about the game?
Well, the power is tempting,
Obviously.
especially when you're fighting to survive.
Could
Revenge.
Maybe even revenge. Yeah.
But taking power from this dark source,
Yeah.
it's dangerous.
We've seen what the island can do.
It can twist people.
Mess with their minds.
What if he becomes a puppet?
Good point.
Right.
But then the vent.
Yeah, that's uncertainty.
Hardship.
It's the lone wolf approach.
He's on his own.
Relying on his skills.
His wits.
But who knows where it leads?
It could be a dead end.
It could be a trap.
It could be the way out.
We don't know.
It's a gamble either way.
It is.
But this choice,
Yeah.
it's about more than just survival.
Right.
It's about integrity.
Will he compromise
Yeah.
his values for power?
If he stick to his guns,
Even if it means more risk.
this is deep.
It is.
This game is really about,
Self-discovery.
yeah.
It's about confronting your limits,
What do you believe in?
your beliefs.
Sometimes the most dangerous enemy,
Isn't the island?
it's yourself.
It's the darkness within.
So what is Bryan's ultimate goal?
That's the question.
Is it just to survive?
Or is there something more?
Yeah, is he looking for something deeper?
Something beyond just staying alive?
Will the island let him find it?
Or will it break him?
Man, we're getting philosophical.
It's heavy stuff.
But that's what makes this game so good.
Survive the island.
It's not just a game.
It's a reflection
Yeah.
of what it means to be human.
What would you sacrifice
What compromises would you make?
to survive?
What kind of person would you be?
When things get tough,
In the face of
how do
adversity,
you stand there
on that rooftop.
with the weight of that choice,
We're with you.
holding our breath?
What will you choose?
What will it mean?
For your survival.
What will it reveal?
About who you are.
At your core.
So back to chapter 8.
Okay.
We've got those two options.
Power or the vent?
Knowing Bryan. What do
Yeah.
you think?
I think back to his journey,
Mm-hmm.
seeking knowledge.
Control.
He wants control.
That ship.
Entering the ship,
Sticking with Rosenda.
climbing that building.
Breaking into the bunker.
He's not passive.
He makes things happen.
Maybe that power.
Yeah.
It fits.
It's tempting.
There's that skepticism.
He doesn't trust easily.
He's seen how the island corrupts
Can he really take that power?
and risk becoming corrupted himself.
And what about that vent?
Ooh, the vent.
The third option.
That's a tougher road.
More independent.
He's on his own,
But maybe
Yeah.
he doesn't have to choose.
between power and surrender,
Maybe he can find his own way.
his own path,
Using his skills.
that self-reliance,
He's been betrayed.
abandoned.
He's had to rely on himself.
Maybe that's what appeals to him now.
It's a tough choice.
It really is.
What will he value?
Power independence.
Or something else entirely?
All right, so 8 chapters in. Chelsea's Survive the Island playthrough is getting intense, and we need to take a look. See if her choices are putting her on a path to get off this island. Or is she going to meet an untimely demise?
Well, I think what's really intriguing about Chelsea's game is how she embodies this balance of caution and curiosity right from the start. You know, waking up with amnesia on a mysterious island, most people would panic. But Chelsea follows those footprints in the sand, hoping for answers, but also wary of what she might find.
It's almost like she's thinking, okay, let's be smart about this. Information first, then survival. It reminds me of like classic adventure stories, where the protagonist is drawn to the unknown even if it's dangerous. Like that inherent need to explore is what sets the whole story in motion.
And that thirst for knowledge, that could be her saving grace, or it could be her downfall. You know, remember chapter 3, the storm is raging, most players would be hunkering down. But not Chelsea. She's drawn to that ominous stone slab covered in carvings. It's like a moth to a flame. And that's where things start to get really interesting.
It's almost like that slab was a beacon, calling out to her specific kind of curiosity. Most people, I think, would see a giant, creepy stone slab in a storm and think, nope, hard pass. But Chelsea dives right in.
Exactly. And it feels deliberate, doesn't it? Like the island itself is using her desire for knowledge to lure her in, because right after that, we see those dark forces start to whisper, trying to influence her.
Oh, yeah. It's a classic case of be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Even under the influence of the island, Chelsea's core personality shines through. When she encounters Peter in chapter 6, and the voice commands her to stop him, she resists. And it's such a tense moment because you see that internal struggle between her own compassion and this external force trying to control her.
It's in those moments of defiance that you really see her strength of character. You know she chooses compassion over blind obedience. Even when the island is literally whispering in her ear, it makes you wonder, is that inherent goodness? What makes her such a target for the island's manipulation?
It's like, if the island is truly sentient, wouldn't it want to corrupt the most resilient, the most inherently good players? Almost like a test. Like, can I break even the strongest will? So fascinating.
Absolutely. And that internal struggle comes to a head in chapter 7, when she attacks Peter. Not out of her own volition, but because the island is forcing her. It's heartbreaking to see her fight against it, to know she doesn't want to hurt anyone.
It's a reminder that even the best intentions
Yeah.
can be twisted and used against you, especially in a place like this island. And it brings us to that cliffhanger ending of chapter 8, where, overwhelmed and battling for control, she pulls Peter and they both fall into the engine.
And that's where we stand, right at the edge of the abyss. We know the engine is a powerful force on this island, but its true nature remains a mystery. Will it be her salvation or will it be her doom?
So many questions, so few answers. But that's what makes Survive the Island so compelling.
Right.
The constant uncertainty, the feeling that every choice matters. Speaking of choices, What are your thoughts on Chelsea's chances of making it out alive, based on what we've seen so far?
It's tough to say. Her odds aren't great. But that spark of defiance, her refusal to give in completely, that gives me hope. I think a lot hinges on this fall into the engine. You know, it could break her. Or it could be the catalyst that helps her break free from the island's control.
It's almost like she's reached a turning point. The first 8 chapters were about survival, about navigating the physical and psychological challenges of the island. But now with this fall into the engine, it feels like her journey is shifting. This could be where she either succumbs to the darkness or rises above it.
I agree, it's a pivotal moment, and her next choices, assuming she even has any after this fall, will be crucial. We know from the game creator's notes that he's a fan of classic adventure stories, where the protagonist's journey often mirrors a descent into the underworld, followed by a triumphant return.
So maybe this fall into the engine is that symbolic descent. And if she can survive it, if she can find her way back from the brink, it could mean a transformation, a newfound strength that allows her to finally escape the island.
That's a really insightful observation, and it ties into those recurring themes of trust, resilience, and the power of choice that we've been seeing throughout her game.
It's like she's being tested,
Mm.
pushed to her limits. Take that moment with the stone slab again. Had she chosen to ignore it, maybe the island wouldn't have latched onto her the way it did, but her curiosity, her need to understand that seemed to trigger something.
Think about that for a second. It's not just about escaping the island. It's about proving that human ingenuity, intuition, even compassion can prevail, even in the face of a seemingly all-powerful manipulative force.
No pressure, Chelsea.
Mhm.
But speaking of pressure, let's talk about those odds of survival. We've got this looming cliffhanger. The engine's true nature is a mystery, and the island is clearly messing with her head. How do we even begin to assess her chances at this point?
Honestly, it's a nail-biter. We can analyze past player data, look for patterns, but this game is designed to defy expectations. Remember, the creator specifically said he wanted to avoid predictable outcomes, those seen-it-coming tropes.
He loves twists.
Which is fantastic for us as viewers, but probably terrifying for someone like Chelsea, right? It's like the island itself is a master manipulator, constantly shifting the rules of the game, keeping the players off balance.
And yet there's something about Chelsea's playthrough that feels different. It's like she's learning to anticipate those manipulations to adapt her, thinking that moment where she resists attacking Peter. That wasn't just a choice, it was a statement, a refusal to be controlled. So maybe instead of asking if she'll survive, the better question is, will she break free of the island's control? Will she retain her sense of self, her morality, even if it means sacrificing her chances of escape? That adds a whole new layer of complexity to the game, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's like the game is forcing us to grapple with the very definition of winning. Is it purely about physical survival, or is there a deeper, more psychological victory to be had? The victory of retaining your humanity, even in the face of unimaginable pressure.
And that's what makes Chelsea's story so compelling to follow. It's not just a game anymore. It's a philosophical exploration of free will manipulation and what it means to truly be in control of your own destiny.
And the stakes are incredibly high. Whatever awaits Chelsea and Peter at the bottom of that chasm, it's going to be pivotal.
It's like they're diving headfirst into the heart of the mystery, and we're right there with them, holding our breath, waiting to see what happens next. This is the kind of storyteller that keeps you up at night. You can't just put it down to forget about it. You're constantly analyzing, theorizing, trying to figure out what it all means.
It's a testament to the power of interactive storytelling, of how a well-crafted narrative can make us feel so deeply invested in the fate of these characters. And in a way, Chelsea's story becomes our own, doesn't it? It makes us question our own choices, our own vulnerabilities, our own capacity for resilience.
Absolutely. It's like holding a mirror up to our own psyches, asking ourselves, what would I do in that situation? And there's no easy answer, because the game is designed to challenge our assumptions, to force us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves.
Which is precisely why it's so captivating. But as much as we want to speculate about the future, let's not forget the journey that brought us here. Chelsea's decisions in those first 8 chapters, her reasoning, her struggles, they all played a part in shaping this moment.
Okay, so we've talked about her choices, her motivations, but what about the island itself? What do we actually know about this place? And how might it be influencing her journey? Could it be that the island is intentionally manipulating Chelsea's choices to guide her towards a specific outcome?
That's a fascinating question, and one that the game deliberately leaves unanswered. But let's look at the facts. We know the island can communicate with players, influence their thoughts and actions. We've seen it with Chelsea. And we know from other playthroughs that this isn't a unique occurrence.
Right, and it seems like the island targets players who exhibit certain traits. curiosity, a strong moral compass, a willingness to trust, almost like it's seeking out those who are most likely to resist its influence.
Like it's looking for a worthy adversary, someone who can challenge its power.
Mm.
And that brings us back to the engine, this mysterious force at the heart of the island, the thing Chelsea and Peter are now hurtling towards. Do you think the engine is the source of the island's power?
It's certainly implied. Remember those glowing glyphs Chelsea deciphered back in Chapter 3? They seem to trigger something, almost like they activated a connection between her and the island. Perhaps those glyphs are somehow related to the engine, a way for the island to exert its control.
That's a very plausible theory. And if that's the case, then this fall into the engine could be the culmination of everything she's experienced so far. All her choices, her struggles, her moments of defiance. They've all led to this moment.
So it's not just about surviving the fall. It's about confronting the source of the island's power head-on. It's almost like a final showdown, a battle for her soul.
Mm.
But what does that mean for her chances of escape? Is it even possible to defeat something like that?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Even if she manages to survive the fall, even if she somehow weakens the island's control, it doesn't guarantee her escape.
It's almost like she's playing a game of chess against a grandmaster who can see 5 moves ahead. But even grandmasters make mistakes.
Right.
There has to be a weakness, a vulnerability that Chelsea could exploit. Maybe that's what this fall into the engine's all about, finding that weakness
Yeah.
and using it to her advantage.
And that's what makes this ending so compelling. It's not just a cliffhanger. It's a challenge to the players, to us as viewers, to think outside the box, to consider possibilities we haven't even imagined yet. And that's the beauty of Survive the Island. It's a game that keeps you guessing, keeps you engaged, right up until the very end.
And that's where we'll leave it for today, with Chelsea and Peter falling into the unknown, their fates uncertain. But as we wait for the next chapter to unfold, let's keep those theories coming. What do you think awaits them at the bottom of that abyss? What choices will Chelsea make? And ultimately, will she find a way to escape this island and reclaim her freedom? Join us next time as we continue our deep dive into Survive the Island and unravel the mysteries of her extraordinary journey. Until then, keep those minds sharp and those theories flowing.